I'd like to start with the Dean of the Temple Law School, Dean Joanne Epps. I guess if I were to summarize Dean Epps, she has always struck me as somebody who absolutely exudes integrity. She sweats integrity.
He has a way with words.
It's an image.
Dean Epps has been the Dean of Temple Law School since 2008. Her vision of legal education as a path for the next generation of leaders in our profession is shaped not only by her distinguished and diverse career as a scholar, but by her service as an assistant United States attorney in Philadelphia and a deputy city attorney in Los Angeles. At its core are the values that for her define the legal profession, service, integrity, and passion. Dean Epps has been named one of the 25 most influential people in legal education. She received the 2014 Justice Sonia Sotomayor Diversity Award by the Philadelphia Bar Association and is a 3-time honoree as one of the 100 most influential black lawyers in the country. She's an active member of both the American Law Institute and the American Association of Legal Scholars, and she served on so many ABA committees that I actually can't go through the list. We don't have enough time. I think it's probably good enough to say that she's deserving of the award that she won from the Philadelphia Bar Association, the Sandra Day O'Connor Award, which is given to a female attorney who has demonstrated superior legal talent, achieved significant legal accomplishments, and has furthered the advancement of women in both the profession and the community. Those are just some of the accolades that she's received for her teaching and professional career. But she's done an extraordinary number of things in the community that I think give her a unique perspective on a prosecutor's role, in addition to simply serving as both a state or local and federal prosecutor. She's the court-appointed monitor of the City of Philadelphia's compliance with stop and frisk procedures. She's been a member of the Board of Directors of the Defenders Association of Philadelphia since 1991, and she served as chair of the Matters Task Force on Police Discipline under Mayor John Street. She's been a member of the Pennsylvania Judicial Independence Commission and a member of the Pennsylvania Commission for Justice Initiatives. And in 2009, she became a member of the Advisory Council of the Pennsylvania Prison Society and sits on the advisory board of the Public Interest Law Center. So basically, she's an expert in all of it. And we're absolutely thrilled to have her here to help us understand the prosecutorial perspective in all of this as well. Dean Epps.
Thank you, John. That was really a very lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
Kind of a slow start.
No, not at all. I'm really delighted to be here, Michael. That was just wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your life with us. In some regards, I feel a little bit in an awkward position, so I want to start by saying that I am, in making these remarks, which I don't think actually will take 10 minutes, but one never knows. I'm speaking only for myself. I want to be really clear that I don't have any ability to speak for prosecutors in general, either those with whom I worked or those who are working today. But as we planned for this panel, and I reflected on it particularly over this past weekend, I realized that this is a really, really difficult conversation. And it was brought home today, for those of you who know that the Department of Justice today issued a report about Ferguson and the fact that the police officers at Ferguson have engaged in systematic abuse of the rights of African Americans in that city. And while I was driving over here, I heard people from Ferguson commenting on how grateful they were to have the facts that they'd been alleging vindicated. And I thought about the number of people that would say, yeah, well, that's because you have a black attorney general, and they would dismiss this and not come to any particular conclusion. And I don't mean by starting there to suggest that this topic is one that is understood in the context of race. I don't think that's the case. But I think that it is very much affected by one's perceptions and one's understanding of what the goals are in our criminal justice system. And when John was introducing this program, he made a point that I think is really important for me, which is that I think it's important to differentiate a really bad prosecutor who engages in bad faith in withholding evidence that that prosecutor knows either exculpates the person or would be available to be used by that person's lawyer to create a reasonable doubt. And in my judgment, that is an easy case because I always said as a prosecutor something that I believed then and believe now. We don't live in a country where we get to, sort of put a divining rod over somebody and have the thing light up and go, oh, you're guilty, and send that person away and put the divining rod over somebody else and say you're innocent. In our country, we only get to convict those people that the government is able to prove are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's not the same category of all of those who are guilty. So in my mind, a prosecutor who has in her possession evidence that she thinks proves that the defendant is innocent, that's easy. And I do agree that there are very few people that actually relish the notion of locking up somebody you think is innocent, because that means the bad guy's still out there. I think the closer case is when the prosecutor believes that she actually has the person who has committed the crime. And she feels, as I certainly did in my job, that we have an obligation to uphold society's values and to convict the guilty. But in this country, we have to remember that we do that fairly. And I was also thinking as I was preparing for this, I don't know how many of you listen to podcasts. I have a fairly long commute, and there are some great podcasts in the world. If you don't ever do that, one is This American Life, one is Radio Lab, there was the whole Serial podcast. But for this purpose, I want to talk about This American Life. They did a two-part series just last month on the way cops see it. And they were talking about the different perceptions of citizens and the way police see things. And they did this really unbelievable story from Miami Gardens, Florida, a place, I don't even know where Miami Gardens is. But there was a mentally disabled teenager who did part-time sweeping at what I would think would be the equivalent of our Wawa, a convenience store. And the police used to arrest him regularly as he was leaving for trespassing. And the owner of the convenience store said, he actually works here. And they were like, yeah, we don't care, we're arresting him for trespassing. And so at some point, the owner of the convenience store, who understood that this struggling teenager was living in a household with a mom who was also struggling, put a cot behind a partition at the back of his store and put a bed there, and invited the teenager to sleep there, so that he now lived at the convenience store. I'll short circuit it, but you really ought to go to npr.org and check out this podcast. He was arrested 62 times for trespassing at a place where he lived. And I remember saying to myself in my car, that is just so wrong. That is so wrong. And it's wrong not just because it violates the law, but it's wrong because it taught this young person what justice in his town was. Justice in his town was not justice at all. So I bring that back to the notion of Brady, and I think that what we struggle with in this country, I think, is what our goals are. We don't actually have a sporting sense of justice in this country, but we have an adversary system, and we have not so far decided that the right answer is for prosecutors to feel free, to be obligated to open their files. That would solve this problem. If prosecutors were required to open their files, then we wouldn't be here talking about Brady. But we're not there yet, and I don't actually think, given this court system, but don't want me to demean anybody who's not here, but I don't actually think we're likely to get there soon. So I think what we need is leadership in prosecutors' offices, like the person to whom John alluded, who said, we don't just represent the community, we don't just represent the victim, we represent the defendant too. I was fortunate enough to be a prosecutor in two offices where that's what we were told. I felt like I worked in offices where we meant to do it right. But I will confess to you, that doesn't make the individual cases easy. I don't know how many of you heard about the controversy this week about what color was the dress. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So if you haven't checked that out, you should go on the news. That's really interesting. So there's dress. And the question is the dress blue and black, or white and gold? Now, you're sitting there, if you don't know this, you're like, okay, well, that's not close. Blue and black, white and gold. I looked the first time, I'm going, it's white and gold. My husband goes, it's blue and black. I'm like, it's white and gold. Fast forward, the actual dress, it turns out, was blue and black. But depending on the way the light hit it and the way our brains interpret light, a lot of people thought the dress, the blue and black dress, was white and gold. So we have to decide in this country what it is that we're actually trying to accomplish. Because as a prosecutor, if I have a case where I know the evidence is blue and black, and I have some witness that says white and gold, I'm like, well, they're nuts. It wasn't white and gold. And we try as a matter of cognition to rationalize that because we think we know the right answer. And I think what we have to appreciate as human beings is, A, we might not have the right answer, but B, it's wrong for a defendant who believes that the truth is blue and black to ever hear me stand up in a courtroom and say that the truth is white and gold. I do so much damage to our system when I do that. So I think that this is a wonderful conversation. I commend you for doing it, but I will close with the recognition that if we don't go to open files, I think we're going to be here 25 years from now, and it's not because of the lack of goodwill on the part of prosecutors. It is because we are in a system where we have to make judgments, and the only way we're going to make judgments is personally and in response to the leadership of organization. And so I hope we will continue to appoint really good prosecutor leaders because that's the way out for right now. Thanks so much.